Welcome back to the program. We now want to continue with the next segment, but in case you are just joining us, karibu tena sana. This is Good Morning Kenya. I am Jane Mamboy. You can let us know where you're watching us from this morning. Use the hashtag Good Morning Kenya on Twitter. Our official station handle ever remains to be at KBC Channel 1, and my handle is at Jane Mamboy. And my colleagues will be giving you their handles in a bit. But let us start off with the Daily Nation. Very busy today. So many pictures have been put there, a lot of pictorial representation. But let's start with the main read. 2022, Uhuru follows Moi's script. Uhuru follows the Moi script, and this is in line with his activity, in line with looking as to who is going to take over after him. Unlike his predecessor, Mwai Kibaki, President Uhuru Kenyatta is keen to influence choice of who will take over after him when his second term, of course, comes to a close in August of next year, in what is seen as a bid to shape his legacy. And this has been evident so in regards to how involved he has been with the key presidential aspirants, in as much as he's had a sort of fallout, quote unquote, with his deputy. They have also interacted, and especially looking at the national holidays and the national platforms that they get to engage. And on the other hand, we also do have his relationship with ODM leader Raila Odinga, which formally goes back to 2018, how his involvement from that time is going to shape his successor come 2022. Away from that, the story concerning the Kitui tragedy continues to unfold, and today they've gotten to hear from the couple whose wedding this particular bus was ferrying the choir to. This is the story of Mr. David Mutua and his wife Veronica, who have been married for 5 decades. They were renewing their vows, and it ended up in the whole ceremony being hastened because even part of their family, some of the family members were in that particular ill-fated bus. They've given their story there on page 3 of this particular daily. Coming to some bit of education, exams. Okay, my paper decides to do a backflip. So exams with human face, quote unquote. Interior CS Fred Matiang'i and his counterpart, Professor George Magoha, yesterday they were in Mugirango, in South Mugirango, where they handed over a few classrooms at Egetonto Primary School in Kisii County, and they went on to say that the 2021 national exams are already slated and ready and slated for March and April next year, and they will be tailor-made to factor in the challenges the candidates have experienced due to the COVID-19 pandemic. They will have a human face as opposed to how things were last year in terms of preparation, of course, in line with the delays and the challenges that came along with the pandemic. Now, finally, cost of power is still high despite President Uhuru Kenyatta's promise. This is a story that has been covered here on the back page, and they go on to give details in regards to how electricity charges have actually gone up by 3.3% between the periods of October and the 3rd of December, which is contrary to what His Excellency had said from looking at the same period, because he had said that electricity costs would go down progressively over this past 3 months, and by the time December comes to a close, we will have seen that difference. But that is seemingly not the case. I will be giving you the figures as they have been captured on this particular daily. But that, in a nutshell, is the front page of the Daily Nation for you this morning. Victor.
Absolutely. And before we get into the Star newspaper here, we have got some breaking news that a police officer attached to Kabete police station last night killed 7 people at that particular area, 7 people including his wife. And according to reliable sources, say that the police officer, who is a constable, name still withheld, shot his wife first, armed with an AK-47 rifle, before going on a shooting spree. So far, 7 people confirmed dead, and that is his wife, 5 more people, and later on he turned the gun on himself. This happened at Maya's Bar in Kabete, and according to the reliable sources, it happened at J Heights flat in Kabete. He was driving a Probox, and after shooting his wife, he went on a shooting spree and shot the people indiscriminately, including 2 border riders. The cause of this particular incident is still unknown. Police are still going on with the investigation, and some of the people who were injured in the 1 a.m. incident are still recuperating at the Kenyatta National Hospital. That is the information we have at this particular moment, that 7 people are confirmed dead after a police officer went on a shooting spree at 1 a.m. last night at Kabete, where he shot his wife and went ahead and shot 5 more people and then turned the gun on himself. We are going to follow up that story, and our reporters already following up, and we'll be giving you more details as and when we get more details. Okay, and on to the Star newspaper. Kenyatta's hand in setting up Raila's big day. Not so different from what Jane has mentioned. Kenyatta hand in setting up Raila's big day. Uhuru puts Jubilee's machinery at disposal of a handshake partner who is preparing to show his political might. How is it going to be? Odinga will announce his presidential bid on Friday. We are waiting to see how that will pan out. And of course, the Saturday incident where 31 people have now been confirmed dead after the River Enziu incident, where a bus plunged into the river and swept away a bus ferrying church members to a wedding ceremony. And of course, members are just trying to relive their last moments, and even the survivors telling on how the event went down there. And of course, police are still cordoning off that particular area as investigations still continue, and even as preparations for the burial of the affected families also continue in that particular area. Student dies as sand quarry wall collapses for rescued. Residents say that the walls of the hall were weak due to rain 2 days prior. A former student was killed when a sand quarry's wall collapsed on Sunday evening in Homa Bay. This happened at Kabonyo Village, Kobuye location in Karachonyo constituency. And villagers said that the student was among the 5 people who entered a hole to harvest sand. And finally, on politics, the president's hand in setting up Raila's big day. President's hand is putting the machinery at the disposal of a handshake partner, Raila Odinga, to plan his 2022 5th presidential bid. It will be Raila's 5th attempt actually to capture the highest seat, and it has now been established that the Jubilee, the president's party, is actively involved in organizing what is likely to be Raila's final bid to State House. And ODM leader is expected to show his political might, complete with international connections at the 60,000-seat Moi International Stadium in Kasarani. So we are waiting to see what will happen on that particular day. Doreen Arange Okello.
Intentional.
All right, yes.
All right, let's come to the People's Daily, and perhaps you can begin with that particular story. This is regards to what happened over the weekend in Mwingi. And just as Wamboi has also rightfully put it, looks like the dailies this morning are just continuing to highlight that particular story. And at least today, it's from the eyes of the couple narrating their story. That is the groom, Mutua Mbuvi, 75, and his bride, Veronica Mutua, 70, narrating their story on what happened on that particular day. So when we get to those details, I'll just be telling you how exactly it panned out on that wedding day. And to COVID-19 right now, Kenyans are now urged to take COVID jab. This is after 4.6 million doses arrive in the country, and the ministry continues to reiterate that if you don't take this jab, then beginning that time of December, then you'll be locked out from government services as well as transport. So this is what the article highlights. Even as more doses arrive into the country, to a bit of some politics, this is regards to that Friday meeting by the former premier saying that this is now being termed as a unity test, as Raila Raila invites Oka team to that Kasarani event, one of those events that is being looked forward to, which will be happening on Friday. And also the National Assembly Speaker, that is Justin Muturi, is now urging the presidential candidates and presidential hopefuls to accept next year's general elections, regardless of how the outcome will be looking like. And still to some politics, this is in regards to that 3-day tour in Nyeri County, where the deputy president was traversing. And as this article highlights, is that Ruto strives to undo Raila gains in Nyeri County, being looked at as one of those persons who's really, going up in arms with the deputy president. This is in regards to next year's general elections, August 2022 elections. Still some bit of COVID-19. This is just in regards to the street families and how the lack of IDs is locking them out of COVID job. Remember that as we speak, the government is really trying to ensure that by end of December, they need to have vaccinated about 10 million Kenyans, and by end of 2022, about 27 million Kenyans. As of yesterday, it stood at around 7.8 thereabout million, and looks like right now, much as they're really trying to ensure they do this to the best of their capacity, it looks like there's some bit of loopholes here and there, and this is just as a result of also how some street children are finding it difficult to get the COVID-19 jab because they do not have the birth certificate as well as the national IDs there. To some bit of education, again, one of those stories that also made its way to the GMK news briefs this morning in regards to returning caning in institutions, and just Magoha lauding how private schools are handling discipline cases, unlike how public schools are doing it. So again, to those details, just be telling you more about what this article is highlighting in regards to that. And also national examinations for primary, secondary are now ready. This is ahead of next year, that is in March, when those exams will be taking place. And again, this is the last warning to boda riders, where they are being urged to go for training as well as take up licenses, because when it comes to February and you're riding that boda without a license, then that will attract a jail term as well as a fine, as it has been mentioned by the PS Kibisho there. And also to a bit of some business news, this in regards to what is happening in Naivas supermarket, that the retail chain there, that the sibling rivalry intensifies as the retailer plans for more branches. So what exactly is happening to Naivas? Is it the same case as what happened to Tuskys, and what next for this particular retail chain? And lastly, to some wild news, this is as it pertains to that Omicron variant in South Africa, whereby as it stands, the numbers continues to rise day in, day out in that particular country. But at least some good news is that much as the infections continues to rise, there's still low fatalities in that particular country. That is how the PD looks like this Tuesday. Troy.
Indeed, and on the Standard newspaper, a lot that is here is actually mirroring what is in other papers. And perhaps to start with the headline, they paid for state neglect with their lives. They paid for state neglect with their lives. They say that on December 14th, the year 2019, Infrastructure PS Paul Maringa assessed the breach, urged locals to calm down, and promised an emergency intervention, saying its renovation was a priority. But national and county governments slept on the job. Well, the whole story is on page 8, and of course they're talking about the government had promised to erect a bridge in the year 2019, but between April of 2018 and December of 2019, 10 people have drowned in the same river. Actually, they even have images of some of the vehicles that also killed a lot of people when they plunged into the river Enzo. And of course the residents calling again and again. We saw a lot of leaders actually promise that a bridge will be erected. We are hoping it will not be a fake promise as it is assessed, but you can find the whole story right there. And still, Raila in city as DP Ruto stars central. Actually, some of the things that have been touched by, I think, Doreen, you've also touched on the same, and Vicky, in preparations to the day the big day for Raila Odinga. That is on Friday, and he talked about it's not an ODM matter, it's something that will unite all Kenyans. And of course, logistic-wise, they're actually trying to see whether at least they can be able to accommodate the 10,000 people in a 60,000 person capacity on Friday, as people expect ODM party leader Raila Odinga to declare officially his presidential bid. And still on politics, as talked about, Ruto star Central, and indeed he starred the courts as well, talking about state is using courts to harass my allies. DP accuses the government of intimidating supporters, saying the judiciary is being used by a section of politicians to settle political scores under the guise of fighting graft. That is something, of course, that will elicit something from the courts, and especially Chief Justice Martha Koome. Of course, a lot has been said when it comes to matters polls, when it comes to the courts, with even some quarters asking the CJ, Martha Koome, to recuse herself from the committee that is following up on the preparations of the elections. And she said, I'm staying put because it's my constitutional right and actually duty to make sure that polls in the country are well, are balanced, are fair. And something else that Doreen has touched on, Matiang'i blames rights activists for school fires, that you can find on the 3rd page. And the CS here saying that during his time in school, they were caned thoroughly, which made him what he is today. And I think, guys, you can agree with me that we grew up and we were in school when caning was there. And during our time, it was called Umsita, 6 quite strong canes. And he's talking about this is the remedy that we've been looking for. Reintroduce the cane, just as the Bible says, you spare the cane and you will definitely spoil the child. And that is something that will elicit a lot of reactions. I'm saying that because everything that comes out of the education sector, you'll find that a lot is challenged in the court of law. I'm talking about CBC. The caning, even when it was being withdrawn, it had been challenged in court. Well, we are expecting at least something to be done, because saying that parents have abdicated their duties, their parental responsibilities, and that is why kids are behaving the way they are, and actually issuing a stern warning to all those who will be arrested when it comes to matters banning schools. That's some of the news making headlines. And of course, for the sports fan, Arsenal was beaten 2-1 by Everton, so we are in mourning as Arsenal fans. But anyway, it's what it is. Yeah, man, 2-1, not a good score.
Second win, second loss actually.
Indeed.
In a row.
Indeed, something must be done.
Why?
Must be done.
Quite
You know, as an Arsenal stakeholder,
6 points.
life member.
6 points.
Troy, you also team Arsenal?
Yes. Yes.
I'm a
life member.
The way Victor is excited today, he has a supporter. He doesn't see that.
You joined after me, Troy.
And actually, we were the first one to score. Man,
Then we conceded 2 goals.
Kutangulia?
But today he's seeing peace.
But we are always a comeback team, right?
Yes, that's a good thing about it.
We'll
we are
recover
going
those 6
to actually
points.
brush up everything and get our game back. Trust me.
All right, let's come back to the Daily Nation and focus on a bit of politics that I believe has been covered on all the dailies. And we start with this particular story, the main read actually. Uhuru follows the Moi script, looking at the 2022 succession politics, okay? So this story has been covered here on page 4. And the header says, Uhuru keen to avoid the lame duck tag by managing his succession. And this is contrary to his immediate predecessor, Mwai Kibaki, who, openly declared, or rather openly just took a step back and let those who were hoping to become his successor just, battle it out over there. But it's not the same for President Uhuru Kenyatta. His active involvement in the succession politics, including hosting meetings to reunite opposition leaders reportedly to craft a broad coalition. And the fact that top presidential aspirants seem to be jostling for his attention and underscores his influence. And this is something that critics have said is quite strategic, in as much as on one side he has had this political fallout, you know, the end of the bromance between His Excellency and his deputy. They still have a political relationship that is formidable to some extent. But on the other hand, some argue that Mr. Kenyatta is emulating his political mentor, President Moi, who picked him as his preferred successor. Now, come the Azimio la Umoja whole conversation, and that is also another story that has been captured here. Let me just, I ripped the paper. It is well, the story is still intact. That is also a story that has been featured here, looking at the role that President Kenyatta has in line with the Azimio la Umoja meeting that is expected this coming Friday, where Raila is set to declare his presidential bid at the Azimio la Umoja meeting. And ODM leader was key to point out that all the political parties have been invited and will be having representatives to just join in the meeting, as long as you are like-minded and you're not going to be bringing any chaos during this particular meeting. He went on to say that he's also there. We should expect leaders from across the country, Africa, and the globe as a whole. But now, I'd like to just get to know your thoughts in line with this, Victor, looking at His Excellency's role in line with determining, or rather shaping, the direction in which the country will move forward, even post his time at that office.
Absolutely, and quite interestingly, that is what you're going to be discussing the next hour. Mm-hmm. You know, you put it correctly. President Kenyatta is following the footsteps of his boss, the professor of politics, that is the late President Moi. When the president was just about to exit the platform, mm-hmm. he made it clear that huyu kijana, way back then, if we can go back to the archive, that huyu kijana who was going to be his successor, that came to play several years later. And now, for quite some time, I think President Kenyatta is still trying to have that firm grip of the government until the last minute, because most of the presidents, like you said, President Moi Kibaki was somehow a very quiet person in nature. He's quiet, and he tried to avoid antagonism as much as possible. Even commenting on political matters, he never used to. But then the president is also following the footsteps of his boss, who was his blesser, to say that even if we are going to an election, my word will still have a firm grip on who is going to be the president. And it's quite open now that his support is openly seen. Until probably we see it, but all indicators are that he's rooting for Honorable Raila Odinga.
But then, Victor, on the other hand, we bring in this whole conversation about the relationship between President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy, because the NDC meeting that was called off.
Yes.
Everyone who had a say in that believed that that is when President Kenyatta and deputy are going to officially declare the divorce. The major fallout is going to be happening, but it was called off. So what does that mean? Is it something that the president did intentionally to just not further, stir the pot when it comes to this iffy relationship between him and his deputy, while still ensuring that his relationship with the former premier is still intact?
Absolutely. The NDC will still take place. That is given. The NDC will take place. And of course, some people have been saying that it's going to be the first NDC, because remember, senators like Kipchumba Murkomen and even some of these legislators allied to the Jubilee Party have said that they've never had an NDC for the last 4 years. So this is going to be the first one, and it's going to be the first one of a kind. But then now, it was supposed to happen on the 30th, the day, actually on Tuesday last week, and that is the same day that the president had State of the Nation address. So some would argue that the president did not want to stir the hornet's nest, all right, that you are going to expel your deputy and then go to read State of the Nation to a divided house. So in intelligence probably had it that, first of all, make sure that you have both houses in order, because already the bicameral house is already split, because we have got several MPs allied to UDA, to William Ruto, the deputy president, and now another wing supporting the president. So you could imagine what would have happened in the house during that particular point. We all know and we can remember what happened years back when, people like Babu Wine would boo the president during his State of the Nation nation, and the president will just laugh of it, laugh it off, and you sour. So he didn't want that to happen during his last State of the Nation address.
Yes.
So it will still happen, and probably it's being schemed on how things will unfold.
Indeed, and Victor, if I may
Yes.
take a spin on it, is that some people are arguing that the NDC will not take place. Reason being, they have never ever had an NDC before.
No.
And another thing they're talking about is that everybody has just left Jubilee. So how many people are going to be there? And another thing, on Friday, Raila Odinga, who is expected to proclaim his presidential bid, they're talking about he will be endorsed by some ODM and some from Jubilee, more or less seeming like a merger or a work together. So what is the point of doing something that we've never done? Looking at Mount Kenya, it had what, 10 governors elected from the Jubilee party? All of them have left. Actually, the last one was the Nyeri governor talking about, I've been left in the cold, I have to go. So if Jubilee intends to do an NDC just a few months to the election, to exactly formulate what, and almost everyone has, others have decamped to UDA, others have gone to other parties, others have formed their own clusters. So what is the point? Why don't you just do the merger with ODM and everything goes? But anyway, this is politics. Anything can happen.
What is the point?
Anything goes. And it looks like the president is just, playing it safe before he actually exits that particular seat and just being very smart about it. Trying not to taint his legacy. Trying not to taint his legacy.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that is going to form our basis of our discussion the next hour with the analyst. The same question, what is the point? All right, Troy, what is the point? And the same question you've asked, we are going to ask that same question. Is it trying not to be a lame duck president to this end? It's going to be an interesting one. All right? Okay.
We take a very short breather. We'll be back with more of what we have lined up for you. Do stay with us.